Lena's world cracked open the moment she heard Ethan's voice drifting through the half-lit hallway, his words slicing through her chest like cold metal. "She's too weak to raise this baby," he whispered, and the room around her seemed to shrink until her breath trembled in her hands. She pressed herself against the wall, feeling her heartbeat slam against her ribs as Marissa's sharp tone followed, plotting control over the child Lena already loved more life. The shadows flickered around her, and for a moment she felt small again, until something inside her snapped awake, fierce and steady. If they believed she was too weak, they were not ready for the strength rising in her now. But how could she protect her child when the people closest to her were already planning to take him away? Lena slipped back into her dim bedroom, her breath uneven as she pressed her hand over her stomach, trying to steady herself, even though everything inside her had already shattered. The soft hum of the night outside the window felt like a cruel contrast to the storm inside her chest, every word she overheard echoing through her mind like a cruel drumbeat. She kept replaying Ethan's voice, wondering how long he had doubted her, how long he had allowed his mother's icy whispers to shape his judgment. In the glow of the bedside lamp, she lowered herself onto the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of loneliness settle around her shoulders like a cold blanket. She had always feared failing, always feared not being enough, but now the fear wasn't about her. It was about her baby, and for the first time, the fear sharpened into something stronger, something she didn't fully understand yet. But it pulsed with the promise of resistance. As she sat there, Lena felt her phone buzz beside her, the vibration cutting through the heavy silence. She didn't need to look to know who it was. Ethan had texted 3 times already, his apologies dripping across the screen, like spilled ink trying to rewrite the truth she had heard with her own ears. But apologies couldn't erase the tremor that had threaded through his voice or the certainty in Marissa's. Lena closed her eyes, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing, as she searched for the strength to think clearly. Every part of her wanted to cry, to break down, to crumble under the weight of betrayal. But another part of her, small but growing, refused to let her fall apart. She couldn't let them decide what she was capable of. Not anymore. Not after tonight. She opened her eyes and stared at the darkened doorway, knowing she would have to face them soon. The apartment felt colder as Lena finally gathered the courage to stand, her legs unsteady, but her resolve beginning to burn with a fragile glow. She stepped into the hallway again, each footfall soft yet filled with the weight of her decision. She wasn't ready to confront them, not with her emotions still raw and trembling, but she needed to see their faces. Needed to look into Ethan's eyes and know whether the man she loved was still somewhere behind the fear and weakness she'd heard moments before. The murmur of their conversation drifted toward her, calmer now, almost rehearsed. Lena paused at the corner, her heart thudding against her ribs as she braced herself for what she would see. No matter how broken she felt, she couldn't hide in the bedroom forever. Not when everything she cared about was already slipping through her fingers. When Lena finally stepped into the living room, the entire world seemed to still. Ethan looked up first, his expression filled with guilt that flickered like an uncertain flame, while Marissa's gaze hardened behind him, unwavering and cold. The silence pressed between them until Lena felt it settle like frost on her skin. She swallowed, steadying herself, refusing to let the tremor in her chest show through her voice. She didn't ask them why. They all knew she had heard everything. Instead, she simply stood there, letting the truth hang heavy in the air. Whatever happened next would shift everything. She felt the fear still trying to dig its claws into her, but she also felt the first sparks of something else, courage, raw and unfamiliar but growing. And as Ethan opened his mouth to speak, Lena realized this was the moment everything would begin to change. The early morning light crept through the blinds as Lena sat alone on the edge of the hospital bed, the faint hum of machines filling the quiet room. She had arrived hours earlier in a whirlwind of pain and fear, but now, holding her swaddled newborn against her chest, a calmness settled over her, thin and delicate, but real. Noah's tiny breaths brushed warmly against her skin, anchoring her in a way she had never expected. Yet even in this fragile peace, she knew the storm wasn't over. Ethan hadn't shown up. Marissa hadn't called. Their silence hung over her like a looming shadow, whispering of battle still waiting at the door. But as she traced the soft curve of her son's cheek, Lena felt something solid forming inside her, a quiet strength she didn't recognize. She might have come into this room scared and alone, but she wasn't leaving it that way. A soft knock broke the fragile quiet of the hospital room, and Lena's heart jolted as the door eased open. She expected Ethan's guilty eyes or Marissa's cold stare, but instead, her brother Rico stepped inside, carrying the weight of years unspoken between them. His presence filled the room instantly, grounding her in a way she didn't know she still needed. He studied her face, then Noah's, and something in his expression softened as if he finally understood the world she had chosen to fight for. Lena felt her throat tighten, knowing he must have heard something. Maybe from their mother, maybe from someone else. But the worry in his gaze said he already sensed that trouble was closing in. She braced herself, preparing for the questions she wasn't sure she could answer. But Rico only stepped closer and whispered, "I'm here now." And for the first time since last night, Lena believed she wasn't truly alone. Rico pulled a chair closer to the bed, his voice low but edged with anger as Lena explained everything she had overheard. Each word made his jaw tighten. His hands curling into fists, he tried to hide. Lena felt the weight of her own fear loosen slightly as she spoke, sharing the secret she had carried through the night like a stone pressing into her ribs. Rico listened without interrupting, his usually confident posture stiffening, with each detail about Ethan's betrayal and Marissa's cold determination to take Noah. When she finished, the silence between them felt thick enough to choke on. Rico leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, as he whispered that no one, no matter how wealthy or powerful, was going to take her child. His certainty washed over her like a warm tide, and for a brief, fragile moment, Lena let herself believe it. The door swung open again, but this time Lena's breath caught in her throat as Ethan stepped inside, his expression a mix of regret and panic. Rico immediately rose from his chair, the air between them tightening like a pulled wire. Ethan stammered an apology, but Lena felt the words fall flat before they even reached her. His voice, once warm and familiar, trembled as he insisted he never meant for things to go this far, yet the memory of his whispered doubt echoed too loudly for her to silence. Rico stepped forward, placing himself between Ethan and the bed, and for the first time Lena saw what true protection looked like. Not loud or angry, but steady and unshakable. Ethan tried to peer around Rico, his eyes searching for Lena's forgiveness, but she looked down at Noah instead, letting her silence speak the truth he wasn't ready to face. Before Ethan could step any closer, another shadow filled the doorway. Marissa, her presence cold enough to silence the room. She scanned the space with calculated precision, her gaze lingering on Noah before shifting to Lena with quiet, sharpened judgment. Rico tensed, instinctively moving to block her path, but Marissa merely folded her hands, insisting she was only there to discuss the baby's future. Lena felt her pulse spike, her grip tightening as Noah stirred gently beneath her chin. The audacity of Marissa's calmness struck her like a slap. How easily this woman could speak of her child as if he were a possession, rather than a life born from her heart. But instead of shrinking, Lena lifted her chin, letting Marissa see the strength rising behind her eyes. Whatever fear remained inside her, it no longer controlled her. Not now. Not ever again. Lena felt the weight of the night settle over her as she left the hospital 2 days later. Noah bundled securely against her chest while Rico carried the small bag of baby essentials beside her. The air outside was sharp and cool, touching her skin like a reminder that the world she had known was gone and a new, unpredictable one had begun. She tried not to look for Ethan's car, tried not to wonder if he felt even a fraction of the fear that now pulsed through her veins. Instead, she focused on the warmth of Noah's tiny breaths, each one grounding her in the moment. Rico stayed close, scanning the parking lot as though expecting trouble to step out from behind a shadow. And though Lena didn't say it, she feared he was right. Because Marissa didn't lose, and the silence from the Vale family since yesterday didn't feel like the end of a fight, but the beginning of a storm waiting to break. Back at Lena's apartment, the familiar walls felt foreign, as if everything inside had shifted while she was gone. She moved slowly through the living room, adjusting Noah's blanket while Rico checked the windows and doors, like a soldier preparing a post. She tried to ignore the anxiety coiling in her stomach, but every small sound made her pulse quicken. When her phone vibrated again, flashing Ethan's name, she turned the screen face down. She couldn't bear to hear more apologies or empty promises. Not when Marissa's intentions were still hanging over them like a blade. Rico told her they needed to talk to someone who knew the law, someone who could protect her and Noah from whatever was coming. Lena hesitated, frightened by the idea of turning her private battle into something bigger, but she knew hiding wasn't safety anymore. For Noah's sake, she would do whatever it took. Rico spent the next hour making calls, pacing the living room while Lena sat in the rocking chair, her hand softly brushing Noah's cheek. Each time Rico spoke Marissa's name, Lena felt her chest tighten, as if the walls themselves were closing in. When he finally hung up, he knelt beside her and explained that a lawyer he trusted could meet them tomorrow morning. The thought of sitting across from a stranger and explaining her fear made Lena's throat close, but Rico's steady presence guided her through the rising panic. He reminded her that strength wasn't loud or showy. Sometimes it was the simple act of showing up when everything inside you wanted to run. Lena looked down at Noah, feeling the truth of those words settle into her bones. She wasn't fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for the tiny life breathing softly against her heart. A sudden, firm knock echoed through the apartment, freezing both Lena and Rico in place. Rico stood quickly, motioning for Lena to stay seated as he approached the door with careful steps. Lena's heartbeat hammered in her ears as she clutched Noah closer, her breath catching when she heard Ethan's voice seep through the door, pleading softly for her to let him explain. Fear mixed with anger in her chest. She didn't know which emotion was heavier. Rico opened the door only halfway, blocking Ethan's path with a presence that needed no words. Ethan's eyes searched past him, desperate and wet at the edges, begging for a chance to fix what he had broken. But Lena couldn't move, her body locked between the pull of old love and the sharp memory of betrayal. All she managed was a whisper, "Not tonight," and the door slowly closed. The apartment sank into a heavy quiet after Ethan's footsteps faded down the hall. Lena leaned back in the rocking chair, feeling Noah's tiny fingers curling around the fabric of her sweater, as if anchoring her to the earth. Rico sat on the arm of the couch, watching her with a mix of worry and admiration. He told her she had done the right thing, but Lena wasn't sure. Every decision felt like walking a tightrope over an abyss she couldn't see the bottom of. She knew Ethan's intentions were tangled in guilt and confusion, but Marissa's were razor sharp, and she couldn't afford to confuse the two. The storm was coming, and she could feel it pressing at the edges of her life. Still, as she looked down at Noah's peaceful face, she felt a quiet flame burning inside her. Whatever fight lay ahead, she would face it. Not as the weak girl they believed she was, but as a mother who refused to break. Morning arrived with a heavy gray sky, matching the knot sitting in Lena's stomach, as she stepped into the lawyer's office with Noah nestled against her chest, and Rico walking close behind. The quiet hum of printers and murmured conversations echoed faintly through the narrow hallway, but none of it softened the fear tightening her breath. The lawyer, Miss Ramirez, listened intently as Lena explained everything. Ethan's hesitations, Marissa's threats, the whispered plan to take Noah. With every detail spoken aloud, Lena felt the truth cut deeper, raw and painful, but strangely freeing. Ms. Ramirez leaned forward, her voice calm and firm as she explained Lena's rights, the protections available to her, and the strength she didn't realize she already held. For the first time, someone outside her small, fragile world believed her. And as Lena looked down at Noah, she felt something click into place. She could fight. She would fight. As Miss Ramirez continued outlining the legal steps ahead, Lena felt her heart beat slowly steady, each word strengthening her resolve a little more. She learned about temporary protections, emergency filings, and the ways Marissa's threats could be documented. Hearing these options felt like being handed tools she never knew she had. Still, a flicker of doubt crept through her as she wondered how far Ethan would go, whether he would stand with her or retreat into the shadow of his mother's control. Rico placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her as Miss Ramirez spoke about gathering texts, recording incidents, and keeping a detailed timeline. Lena realized that this battle wouldn't be quick or clean, but for Noah she would face every twist. With each passing moment she felt herself shifting, no longer the girl who hid behind walls, but the woman preparing to protect her son, no matter the cost. That afternoon, Lena returned home feeling both exhausted and strangely lighter. But the peace didn't last long. Her phone buzzed with a message from Ethan, begging her to meet him alone. Rico advised against it, warning her that desperation could make people unpredictable, especially when controlled by someone like Marissa. Yet Lena felt the need to hear Ethan's truth, to know which side of the looming war he stood on. So she agreed to meet him in the cafe down the block, a public place where she felt safer. Holding Noah close, she walked quietly out of the apartment as Rico shadowed her from a short distance. Her heart thudded as she approached the cafe window and saw Ethan already inside, his head in his hands. For a moment she paused, whispering to herself that whatever he said, she was no longer the woman who bent and broke. She was someone new. Inside the cafe, Lena sat across from Ethan, Noah resting in her arms as Ethan struggled to find words. His voice cracked as he apologized, claiming he had panicked, that he never meant to hurt her. But when he spoke of Marissa, the truth slipped out. He feared her. He always had. Lena watched him closely, seeing not the partner she once trusted, but a man torn between love and control he couldn't escape. Ethan admitted that Marissa was preparing paperwork, trying to build a case that Lena was unfit. Anger and fear surged through Lena, but she held her expression firm, refusing to give Ethan the power to see her break. She told him she knew everything, that she had already taken steps to protect Noah. Ethan's face paled, guilt deepening into something close to shame. Still, Lena sensed his conflict and the dangerous reality that he might not choose her. Leaving the cafe, Lena felt the world spin a little faster as Ethan's confession replayed in her mind. She walked with Noah pressed securely against her, each step fueled by a mix of fear and renewed determination. Rico walked beside her, silent but steady, sensing the shift in her energy. When they reached the apartment, Lena paused at the door, realizing that this was the moment everything changed. She wasn't just reacting anymore. She was preparing. She would gather every message, every threat, every detail. She would protect Noah with a strength she had never known she possessed. As she stepped inside, closing the door behind her, Lena felt the weight of her decision settle firmly within her chest. The storm wasn't coming. It was here, and this time she would not face it with trembling hands, but with the unshakable resolve of a mother who refused to be controlled. The day cracked open with a chill as Lena stood in her living room, gathering the documents Miss Ramirez had told her to keep. Messages from Ethan, recordings of Marissa's veiled threats, and the timeline Rico helped her write. Each item felt like a shard of the life she never imagined she'd have to protect so fiercely. Noah slept quietly in his bassinet, unaware of the storm gathering outside. Lena's hands trembled as she zipped the folder shut, not from fear this time, but from the weight of everything she was preparing to face. Rico hovered near the window, scanning the street with a stillness she'd come to rely on. The apartment felt too quiet, like the world was holding its breath. Lena glanced at Noah and whispered a promise to him, a vow anchored deep in her heart. She would not lose him. Not to fear. Not to Marissa. Not to anyone. The knock came so sudden and sharp that Lena nearly dropped the folder. Rico turned toward the door instantly, his posture rigid, his expression shifting from alert to ready. Lena's breath caught as she stepped backward, instinctively placing herself between the door and Noah. Another knock followed, quieter this time, but somehow colder. When Rico opened the door, only a crack. Marissa's voice slid through like ice, smooth and controlled as she announced she was there to check on the baby's welfare. Lena felt her pulse thunder as Marissa pushed a stack of legal papers forward, claiming she had already filed to seek temporary custody. The words struck Lena like a blow. Rico slammed the door shut before Marissa could say more. For a moment, Lena felt her legs weaken, but the fear burning in her chest quickly hardened into something sharper: anger. They were really going to try to take her son. Minutes later, Lena sat on the edge of the couch, her breathing shallow as she stared at the papers Marissa had left behind, each page filled with twisted claims meant to paint her as unfit. Rico paced in front of her, fury flashing in every step he took. But Lena felt something shift inside her, something steady and unbreakable. She picked up the papers again, reading them slowly, refusing to let the lies drown her. When she looked up at Rico, her voice didn't shake as she said they were going straight to Ms. Ramirez. Rico stopped, surprise softening the anger in his eyes. Lena realized then that strength didn't always roar. In moments like this, it simply refused to back down. She gathered Noah into her arms, holding him close as if anchoring her resolve. If Marissa wanted a war, Lena would meet her head-on. By the time they reached Ms. Ramirez's office again, Lena felt her nerves buzzing like electricity under her skin. She handed over the documents, her voice steady as she described Marissa's visit. Ms. Dale. Ramirez scanned the papers, her brows tightening, then looked up with a firmness that made Lena's breath ease. She explained that Marissa's claims were weak, manipulative, yes, but not grounded in truth. She assured Lena that they could file an emergency response to block any temporary custody attempt. Hearing this felt like someone had lifted a boulder off her chest. But as Miss Ramirez continued, she warned that Marissa's next move would likely be swift and aggressive. This wasn't over. Lena nodded, clutching Noah close, determination blazing through her fear. She was done being cornered, done being underestimated. Whatever storm Marissa thought she could unleash, Lena was ready. That evening, back at the apartment, Lena felt the weight of the day settle over her like a heavy blanket. But beneath it, a fierce fire burned. She held Noah in her arms, rocking him gently as Rico made tea in the kitchen. The air was quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and Noah's small breaths. Lena gazed down at her son, certain now that the world would have to break its own rules before she ever allowed anyone to take him from her. She thought of Marissa's cold stare, of Ethan's shaken voice, of the legal battle ahead. Fear still lived in her chest, but it no longer controlled her. As Noah's tiny fingers curled around her thumb, Lena felt a surge of strength so powerful it nearly overwhelmed her. She had been called weak her whole life, but motherhood had rewritten her entirely. The morning sun crept through the blinds like a soft whisper, but Lena felt none of its warmth as she reviewed the emergency filings Ms. Ramirez had prepared. Every line carried the weight of the battle she was stepping into, yet instead of fear, she felt an unexpected calm settle deep within her. She had spent years shrinking herself, apologizing for her existence, doubting her worth. Yet today she felt taller than she ever had. Noah slept against her shoulder, fitting into her arms as if he'd always lived there, grounding her with every tiny breath. Rico walked quietly around the apartment, gathering essentials for whatever the day might bring. When he said she was stronger than she realized, Lena didn't flinch or deny it. She believed him. The world outside still felt hostile, still filled with eyes waiting to judge her, but she no longer felt small beneath them. She was stepping into a new version of herself, one that no longer bowed. Later that day, Lena stepped outside with Noah bundled against her, the crisp air brushing against her face, as if welcoming a new beginning. She walked toward Miss Ramirez's office with Rico beside her, feeling each step strengthen the resolve she had been building for weeks. She no longer avoided her reflection in store windows. Instead, she caught glimpses of a woman with fire behind her eyes. When they reached the office building, Lena paused at the entrance, gripping Noah close as she felt the weight of everything shifting around her. Her life no longer controlled by whispered judgments or shadowed threats. Inside, Ms. Ramirez greeted her with a nod that held both respect and readiness. Lena knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy, but she felt a powerful steadiness settle within her. She wasn't walking into this meeting afraid. She was walking in ready to rebuild her future on her own terms. Inside the meeting room, Lena listened closely as Ms. Ramirez explained the next steps. Securing protective orders, responding swiftly to any legal threats, documenting every interaction with Ethan and Marissa. Instead of shrinking under the pressure, Lena absorbed every detail, her mind sharper than she ever remembered it being. Noah lay sleeping beside her in his carrier, the steady rhythm of his breathing soothing her nerves. Rico sat across from her, his silent support filling the space. When Ms. Ramirez asked Lena a direct question about her boundaries moving forward, Lena answered without hesitation. She would not meet with Marissa alone. She would not allow Ethan to manipulate her with guilt. She would not accept the narrative they tried to force onto her. Saying those words felt like shedding a lifelong weight. And for the first time, Lena felt completely aligned with the strength she had always been told she lacked. As they left the office, Lena felt lighter than she had in months. The weight of Marissa's threats no longer sitting like chains around her ankles. She walked slowly, letting the air fill her lungs, each breath grounding her further into her newfound strength. But halfway down the street, a familiar car pulled beside them, Ethan stepping out before it had even fully stopped. His face was tight with worry, but there was something else in his eyes too. Realization. He saw Lena differently now, as if the version of her he once doubted had grown beyond anything he expected. Ethan begged her for a chance to talk privately, but Lena stood tall, reminding him she now had boundaries he would respect. His voice trembled as he apologized again, promising he would stand against Marissa if needed. Lena didn't answer right away. She didn't need validation, only truth. And truth, she realized, took time. That evening, Lena sat near the window, Noah asleep on her chest, watching the sky fade into soft shades of blue and gold. The world outside felt calm for the first time in a long while, and she allowed herself to breathe deeply, letting that peace sink in. Rico sat beside her on the couch, quietly scrolling through updates from Miss Ramirez. Lena thought about everything she had gone through. The fear, the betrayal, the long nights filled with doubt. And she realized something important. She was no longer afraid of who she used to be. Motherhood had cracked her open and reshaped her into someone stronger, steadier, someone who knew her worth without needing anyone else to confirm it. The fight ahead wasn't over, but she no longer faced it trembling. She faced it with resolve, with courage, with love, stronger than any threat Marissa could send her way. The courthouse felt colder than Lena expected, its tall walls and echoing halls carrying a weight that pressed against her chest. She held Noah firmly in her arms, his tiny breaths brushing her collarbone like reminders of why she was fighting. Rico walked beside her, steady and silent, while Miss Ramirez led the way with calm certainty. As they neared the courtroom doors, Lena caught sight of Ethan standing alone, shifting anxiously, his eyes flicking between her and the floor. A few steps away stood Marissa, her posture rigid, her gaze sharp enough to cut through stone. But Lena didn't bow under the woman's stare. She lifted her chin, feeling strength settle through her like solid ground beneath her feet. Today would decide everything. And though fear still lingered quietly inside her, it no longer ruled her. She was ready to speak, ready to stand, ready to be the mother Noah deserved. The hearing began with quiet intensity. As Lena sat before the judge, Noah resting in her arms while Marissa's lawyer listed accusations that made Lena's stomach twist. Lies about neglect, instability, weakness, words engineered to paint her as unfit. Lena expected to crumble under them, but instead she felt a strange clarity sharpen inside her. When it was her turn to speak, she didn't raise her voice or defend herself with anger. She simply told the truth. She spoke about her fears, her struggles, and the strength she found the moment Noah was placed in her arms. Rico's presence behind her felt like a hand on her back, steadying her through every sentence. Ethan shifted uncomfortably across the room, unable to meet her eyes. And when Miss Ramirez stood to tear apart Marissa's claims with calm, precise confidence, Lena felt hope rise inside her like warm light breaking through a storm. As the hearing unfolded, Ethan finally stood to speak, his voice trembling as he admitted what Lena had feared and what Marissa had always denied, that he had doubted Lena not because she was incapable, but because he had been too weak to stand up to his mother. His confession rippled through the room, deflating Marissa's rigid composure for the first time. Lena watched him closely. She saw regret, guilt, and the realization of the damage he had allowed. But she also saw something else. A man finally choosing truth over convenience. Marissa tried to regain control, interjecting sharply. But the judge silenced her with a stern word. The tide had shifted. Lena felt her heart pound, every moment pressing her closer to the decision that would define their lives. She tightened her hold on Noah, whispering softly that he was safe, no matter how the room vibrated with tension. The judge took a long moment before delivering their final words, scanning each face with a calm that made Lena's heart thunder. When the ruling came, it struck the room like a sudden gust of wind. Lena would retain full custody of Noah. Marissa's attempt to claim temporary custody was dismissed entirely. A trembling breath escaped Lena's chest, her eyes flooding with relief, as Rico let out a quiet sigh behind her. Ethan bowed his head, accepting the decision without protest, the weight of his choices settling visibly on his shoulders. Marissa, for the first time, seemed truly stunned, her carefully constructed confidence cracking under the truth. Lena felt an overwhelming mix of emotion: relief, strength, joy, exhaustion, but above all, a profound sense of freedom. She stood tall, holding Noah close, knowing she had fought with everything inside her and won. She was no longer who they thought she was. She was stronger. Hours later, after leaving the courthouse, Lena stood on a quiet overlook near the city park, holding Noah against her as the wind brushed gently through her hair. The world felt different now, lighter, safer, filled with possibility instead of fear. Rico leaned on the railing beside her, the city stretching out below them, bathed in warm sunset gold. Lena whispered to Noah, promising him a life where he would never feel unwanted, unseen, or controlled by anyone's expectations. She had walked through fear, betrayal, and battles she never imagined she'd face. But she had risen stronger than every challenge. This new strength wasn't loud or harsh. It was steady, patient, built from every moment she refused to break. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky with gentle colors, Lena finally felt peace settle inside. She was a mother now, a strong one. No one would ever take that from her again.